Welcome to Financial Issues, where we join reality with truth, helping you make the most of your money by honoring God with your investments. Now listen in as we give you the practical tools and advice you need to become a biblically responsible investor.
Welcome to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you could join us today. Financial Issues is a ministry that helps to educate people about financial issues from a biblical worldview. We have partners of the ministry who benefit from a biblically responsible investment strategy. We give them asset allocation models and a buy list and teach them how to build a portfolio that honors God by screening out companies that use shareholder dollars to support dark agendas like abortion, pornography, the LGBTQ lie. All of those things that grieve the heart of the Lord. We show you how to get them out of your portfolio, and we hope that you will find out more about our ministry and cleaning up your own portfolio. On today's show, we're going to talk a little bit about global currencies. We're going to get to some of your questions that you've been sending in. If you have questions that you want addressed or answered on the show, the best way to do that is, one of two ways. You can call in on days where we're running a live show, or you can go to our website, financialissues.org, and go to the Ask Shanna tab, and then you can submit a question right there, and we'll get to it on the show. And then later in the show, we're going to have my friend and colleague Jason MacDowell back, and we're going to talk about some outside of the box ideas for college planning that can double as generational planning. Our stewardship verse today comes from Proverbs 15:14. The heart of him who has understanding seeks knowledge, but the mouths of fools feed on folly. Well, have you ever heard the old quote, great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people? That's what the first thing that I thought of when I read this scripture. And, those with small minds are called fools by the scripture. Notice this, it all starts in the heart of a man. And the scriptures also say that the overflow of the heart, from the overflow of the heart speaks the mouth. So we will find wisdom if we are seeking the knowledge of God. And we do that in our private, personal time, reading the Word of God, getting to know the character of God. But if we fill our time talking about foolish things, we will reap folly. What do you think, Seth?
You sure will. That's exactly right, Shanna. I like that image of small-mindedness. It's literally someone with a small mind, someone who's not very smart, honestly. And, I think it is true when we read scripture, we see that the wise people are the ones who seek wisdom. So the irony is the wise person knows that in and of himself, he is not wise, and he needs to obtain wisdom from God in order to become wise. And the more you realize how much you need wisdom, the more wisdom you'll seek, hence the more wise you'll become. It's very interesting how that happens. And it's encouraging for us because anyone with a desire to love and serve God can be a wise person. So I would hope that we would never be content with the amount of wisdom that we have or think we have, but would always be seeking more and more wisdom from God. So to switch to our topic of the day today, Shanna, the topic really has to do with global currencies and how they compare to the U.S. dollar, and it's something that we're keeping an eye on, obviously without getting too crazy about it. But we have been hearing, Shanna, much recently of kind of a weakening of the U.S. dollar. And again, I don't want to get bogged down by the global news, but it is important to keep an eye on what's happening from a financial perspective on the geopolitical stage. So just to start here, what can you tell us about the state of the U.S. dollar on the world stage? Is it growing, holding steady, weakening? What is happening to it?
Well, we've just come out of a period where the dollar has been strong, but we are starting to see the dollar weakening against other currencies. Now, the dollar is going to be weakened further when the Fed starts to cut interest rates. That's just how things work. And it also is weakened by the one topic that we talk about ad nauseum here on the show is out of control government spending. Yeah. The Fed has been monetizing our almost $36 trillion of debt by creating money to buy treasuries, which puts more dollars into circulation, making each dollar worth less until they're eventually worthless.
Right. Yep.
So inflation is sort of a hidden tax that hits all consumers. It doesn't discriminate on the basis of color, gender, or sexual orientation.
Yeah. Might be why the lefties like it so much. Nah, never mind.
It's non-discriminatory.
That's right.
Yeah. But Congress is really afraid to address the elephant in the room, which is deficit spending. You know, it's simple math to see you bring in $4 trillion and you spend $6. There's a problem, and it's not going to go away on its own. But you know what? They also benefit from a lot of this spending that they legislate, and it helps them get reelected. The elephant's going to get bigger, though, until we elect fiscally responsible people who are willing to address the big problem, which is spending. One day, the market will focus on this unsustainable, massive debt, and that could likely lead to the next Great Recession, or even be the perfect opportunity for the Antichrist to take the stage. Not that we want to go down that rabbit trail.
Yeah, for sure. So, Shanna, what should we be aware of now regarding what I think is our biggest foe on the geopolitical stage, and that includes when it comes to economics, and of course that's China? Are they facing similar problems that we are as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, China's economy still hasn't recovered to its pre-COVID levels. They've struggled. I thought that their economy would come back a lot faster than it has. But, China and Russia are teaming up. They're also teaming up with a lot of the BRICS nations. They're trying to subvert the dollar. They're recruiting countries, and I can't remember how many at last count, somewhere around 40 countries, I think, around the world. They're recruiting these countries to abandon the dollar. Right now, the dollar is still the currency of global trade, but there's lots of countries hard at work on trying to change that.
Yeah. Are there any other countries we need to be aware of regarding this, or is it kind of mainly China and Russia?
I mean, they're kind of the ringleaders.
Yeah, for sure. So, Shanna, we've received questions in the past, about the possible benefit of holding foreign currencies, perhaps not as part of our investments, but more just as kind of some extra emergency. Is there any merit to doing this if you have a limited amount of foreign currency at your disposal?
I'm not in that camp, so I don't own any currencies unless I go to a foreign country and have to exchange, have to use the currency that they use in that country. But, one day there is going to be a one world currency, I believe, because there's going to be a one world government, and no one knows yet what that will be. I personally don't think it's going to be anything that already exists. And, there's a lot of debate around whether we as Christians will even be here when that happens. I personally believe that we will be, raptured before that time comes. So I don't really see a need for currencies in a portfolio.
Yeah. And then kind of our last question here to wrap this up. For our strategy, what's a good healthy amount of exposure in international funds?
Well, it really depends. International companies can become more valuable as the dollar starts to weaken. And I think they always have some place in a portfolio. And the exposure that you have just really depends. It depends on your age. It depends on your risk tolerance. And to actually find out what we recommend for certain age groups or certain risk tolerances, you have to be a partner. So I would encourage you to do that. But in general, our asset allocation models right now contain anywhere from 2 to 20% of international exposure. But again, become a partner and find out not only how much international exposure you have, but how you can eliminate exposure to companies that are using your dollars to support agendas that are absolutely disgusting to you and to the Lord.
Yeah, good stuff, Shanna. That's awesome. I think we could squeeze a quick question on Ask Shanna here before the break. Fred is asking, should we buy back CD38 since they conformed the letter of dropping them due to support of the LGBTQ stuff?
Yeah, so no, I've answered the question a couple of times, but I don't mind repeating it because people may not have been listening. No, it is off our broad list. It doesn't the company right now, even though I'm glad that they repented, I'm all for repentance and not supporting that DEI or the LGBTQ agenda anymore. That makes them eligible to come back onto our buy list. But, we also look at, real financial things when it comes to evaluating stocks and companies. And there's a few boxes that they don't quite check for us on the analytical team right now to come back onto the buy list. So if you sold it, just hold off. You may see it sometime in the future, but not today. All right. We've got to take a break, but we hope that you're going to stick with us because we're going to come back with more financial issues.
I just love the first book of Exodus. The king says, the Jews are too many. Get rid of them. I command you to kill the firstborn. But the midwives to the Hebrews heard the order, and what did they do? They defied it. And God dealt favorably with the midwives and gave them families. He blessed them for loving life. He blessed them for saving babies. We have re-entered the death cult in this country. You think about how much we elevate death, whether it be the chopping off of parts and we call it transgender care, whether it be shouting our abortion, and you see it so beautifully in John 10:10. It is the divide of the entire scriptures. Now, most people would say John 3:16, but think about it. The enemy has come to lie, steal, cheat, and destroy. I have come to give life and life more abundantly. That's the whole ball game, everybody. It is everything. And we have to have the joy of Jesus Christ to enjoy life and to protect it. It's a gift from above. And Preborn is leading the charge.
Navigating through investment options can be challenging, especially when you're determined to uphold your God-given values. Every dollar you invest is a vote for the world that you want to live in. Let your values guide your investment decisions and help to shape the culture in which we live. Become a beacon of light and pave the way with biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, where faith and finance collide. Before investing, carefully consider the fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses of the investment company. This and other important information can be found in the fund's prospectus. To obtain a copy, visit timothyplan.com or call 800-846-7526. Read each prospectus carefully before investing. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. Thanks for joining us today. Well, Seth, I know we've had some questions coming in from social media and the website. What do we have on deck?
We'll get it started here, Shanna. Kevin asking from New York. Kevin, good to see you there. New York and California. We got listeners there, Shanna, even in those states.
Awesome.
Kevin is asking, what do you define as new money? Are regular paycheck retirement contributions new money? And is deploying new money from my cash position new money? How'd you define it, Shanna?
Yeah, so new money is typically defined as money that hasn't been invested yet. So yes, it would include, money from your paycheck into your retirement plan. Also, maybe if you inherited money or, maybe if you were convicted about biblically responsible investing and you had a portfolio that was full of companies that were supporting the garbage that we as Christians are praying against all the time, abortion, the LGBTQ lie, human rights violations, and so many other things, maybe that's considered new money that needs to be deployed.
Yep. Good stuff there. Shanna, next one. Marcus from Missouri is wondering, the two REITs recently added to the buy list have dividends per share that are about 300 to 600% of their earnings per share. My question is, how can a company possibly sustain such an extreme dividend without enough earnings to pay the dividend?
Well, one, I just looked at one of the two. I didn't have time to dig deep into it that he mentions here, and I'm not sure that he's looking at the correct metric.
Yeah.
You can't compare. If you're looking at the quarterly earnings per share, you need to multiply that by 4. And also, earnings per share include a lot of are some non-cash things, and so we don't look at that metric when we're trying to determine coverage for the dividend. So it's there's a different metric that we use.
Sounds good. Judith from your home state, Shanna, Texas, up next, wondering what is the rule of thumb in taking profit regarding a sector's particular stock, even though that sector in the total amount of stocks has not been fully purchased?
So I'm a little bit challenged by that question, I guess, but we don't have profit taking is not part of our regular strategy. I guess it would look like profit taking if you're rebalancing your portfolio and you're looking at the percentage that one stock makes up of your whole portfolio. So when you have a company that has done really well, then what you're going to see is it becomes a larger and larger percentage of your portfolio if it's growing faster than all of the other things that you have in it. So maybe you started with a 1% allocation, and because it's done so well, I can think of a couple just off the top of my head that we've had on the buy list in the last few years. But maybe they're up 500, 600, or 700%, and now instead of making up 1%, maybe you originally targeted 3, is what you're saying, but you started with 1. You have to kind of disregard that, and you have to look at the percentage of the portfolio that it actually makes up now. So if your goal was to start with 1%, and maybe it grew beyond that, maybe it makes up 10% of your portfolio now because it's just done so well, then you want to trim that back down. So yes, it is taking profits because you have a profit and you're actually selling some of them, but it's more I think it's more beneficial for you to look at it from the point of maintaining proper asset allocation and allocation in any one given stock versus just going through your portfolio to see what's up and then, taking profits out of it. We don't suggest that you do that.
Yep, very good, Shannon. Next one up is Claude from Louisiana. Interesting question here. I'd love to hear your thoughts. He's wondering, what would be the strategy if Kamala Harris wins and implements the dreaded tax on unrealized gains, which is just bananas to me?
Well, I'm going to steal a line from Dan's old playbook and say that you better go buy a comfortable pair of shoes because we're all going to be standing in the same soup lines for a very long time. I don't know if it's going to get that bad. I don't even think that it's really a possibility at all. And, just if Kamala wins, that's a big if. And the other thing too is just wait a week or two. She might totally change her mind about capital gains. She seems to be changing her mind about everything. It was funny. I watched an interview that I think it was Charlie Kirk, and he was interviewing J.D. Vance, and he asked him, why do you think that Kamala keeps changing her mind about all of these different things? And he said that Trump asked him about that before a rally, and he said, well, I think she wants my job. I think she wants on the Trump ticket.
That's right. So funny. Yep.
Even if she does win, I think that there'll be enough of a counterbalance in Congress to keep her from doing anything like that, because she can't do that with an executive order. It would have to be something that was actually passed by Congress to get into tax law. And I just think that, some of the wealthiest people in the world, in the United States, are politicians and or heavily influenced politicians. Yeah. So it would be terrible for the average person. Like if you had to pay an unrealized gain on your 401k or on the value of your home, which, kind of already happens with property taxes. If the value of your property goes up, your property taxes go up as well. But an unrealized gain would be a killer for the U.S., for any economy. Yeah. I'll just say that.
Absolutely. Last one on social media here, Shanna, is Karen. She was saying, I did find my tracker was way off with about half my sectors blank about a week ago. Thank goodness I had those screenshots of trackers that you had recommended and pretty quickly was able to fix it. Figured there was an update. I think that was in regards to some comments we had on Friday, Shad, about the tracker. But it's good that Karen did that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a note at the top of the tracker, once you get your positions in there, take a screenshot or do a printout and I'm hoping, I'm not sure, maybe Seth, you can speak to this, Seth, but I think that's something that we're addressing with the changes on the new website. It won't.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that's just a glitch that we won't have to worry about for much longer. But it is a good idea once you get your positions to take a screenshot or a printout, because if we do change asset allocation models, it takes the data out of that sector column. And, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's a great learning and refresher kind of exercise to go through your stocks and rematch them to the sector that they're in, because, really and truly, you should be understanding the strategy enough as you're building your portfolio to be able to remember which stocks are in which sector. That's a really good learning exercise. So it's not the worst thing in the world if you have to go back through there and figure that out. But these changes with the new website, man, you guys are gonna love it. I think we're gonna start beta testing it pretty soon. But there's gonna be a much easier way, even if you did have to rematch the sectors, for you to be able to figure out very quickly how to do that.
Yep. Good stuff, Shanna. Let's move over to Ask Shanna here. We have Danny, 67 years old, is asking, I have moved the preferreds to the fixed income as you suggested, Shanna. Should we maintain the 6% allocation on both the preferreds and the REITs/financials?
Yeah, so whatever just follow the allocation. Since the REITs and financials are in the same category now, whatever your weighting or your allocation is for that, you're going to divide your REITs and your financials how you see fit between that particular allocation. With the fixed income now, your preferreds are just going to be lumped into that fixed income category. So, yeah, I would say, 5 to 10%, depending on whatever your fixed income allocation is, would probably be fine for your preferreds. You just have to know that they are technically equities. They are not technically fixed income. They act a lot like fixed income, but the price also has the ability to go up and down, just like bonds do as well.
Awesome, Shanna. Pete from Seattle just has a comment for us. Says, I heard the August conference call, got the alert about the closing of FISM News. I'm so sad to hear about this. Let's pray for the team members. They did an amazing job providing an excellent news show. They sure did, Pete, absolutely. Pete was also saying, I sincerely hope they find great jobs serving the Lord in new capacities. I know that you and the rest of the FISM leadership team will do all that you can to help them in that effort. And I say amen to that, Pete, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a really tough decision that we had to come to.
Yeah.
Just with we practice what we preach. So that means being a good steward, and the funds weren't coming in either from sponsors or, just in general revenue to continue to support that program. And, we want to be responsive to where the Lord is leading. So we know that, that they love the Lord and that the Lord loves them. And we have indeed been praying, as you suggested, Pete, that the Lord opens doors, that they find fulfilling employment that pays even more than they were making with the ministry. So we come into agreement with you there, Pete.
Well said, Pete. Thank you for that. Alyssa's up next here, Shanna, wondering, am I reading this right? You have FI36 and FI86 on the sell list. I hold TM59, FI55, and those two positions as well, FI36 and 86, and I'm in the 55 to 65 model. She's 63, Shanna.
Yes, you did read that right. So right now there's a section that has the sell list. The sell list includes all of the things that have been on our sell list in the last 3 months. So, that's a great place to kind of review that. But you may have missed an alert. The alert went out on June 11th for partners. If you go, if you're logged in as a partner and you go to the partner alert tab, you can see all of the most recent alerts, including the June 11th alert there. They're in order, starting with the most current, going to the oldest. And Alyssa, I would just suggest that you go read that alert. It does share some of the reasoning for those putting those on the sell list, and how you can replace those with the things that you can replace them with.
Awesome.
All right.
Jenna, I'm excited for your conversation coming up with Jason. It's going to be fun.
Yep, that's going to be fun. We hope that you're going to stick around. We're going to think outside the box. We're going to help you think outside the box about college planning and generational planning as we talk about some 529 and some legislation that's happened in recent years that may help you be able to do something that you may have thought you never could do. So stick around. We're going to have Jason coming up to talk about that topic, and then we'll have more financial issues. So don't go anywhere.
It's easy to get caught up in the rush and forget about what really matters. Too often, we invest in stocks without knowing what they stand for. When your investments align with your values, your money speaks for you, because biblical values matter, even when investing. Learn how to invest biblically and responsibly. Visit financialissues.org to learn more. That's financialissues.org.
Hi, this is Sheena Bird, the host of Financial Issues. The Financial Issues family is so blessed to have saved tens of thousands of babies, all thanks to the generous support of you, our listeners and viewers. For $140, you can sponsor 5 ultrasounds. Please go to preborn.org, that's preborn.org, or financialissues.org, and click on the Preborn logo. Save a baby, save a life.
Gain valuable insights from partners sharing about financial issues.
We work so hard, all of us do, to get this money, and I knew nothing about how to use it appropriately, biblically. And the strategy is so simple. You guys are on the front line of the battle.
My wife and I have been partners with you for several years, and we have benefited greatly from your advice and your ministry.
I do nothing without following FISM's advice on stocks, and especially since it's coming from a spiritual foundation.
You are amazing. Nobody is doing what you are doing for the body of Christ.
I just wanted to call and thank you for the advice that you gave me a little over a year ago. It has panned out very well.
I never dreamed I'd be able to give money like this.
Become a partner today by simply going to financialissues.org/join. Click the green button to become a partner today.
I'm Todd.
I'm Debbie, and we're Samaritan members.
We have 8 children, ages from 30 down to 15, and we have a ministry called Family Man Ministries.
When he left the pastorate to start the ministry, we had no income for about a year potentially, and so we were living on almost nothing. The cost of healthcare seemed impossible because we had a big family. And so when I started researching ministries, there was no comparison. It was just the best deal. And so a year after we joined, my 10-year-old daughter at the time got pneumonia, and it was scary. Someone sent a card just to Maggie, and it said, not just that we're praying for you, but that God will always take care of you, and here's $5 for you to go out and get ice cream. It was just really special.
To make that connection, that's an amazing thing. I was sold on Samaritan Ministries. I just thought, okay, I'm a part of this.
Securities offered through G.A. Reppel & Company, a registered broker-dealer and investment advisor, member FINRA and SIPC. Opinions expressed by Shanna are hers alone and are for informational purposes only, and do not necessarily represent those of G.A. Reppel or the outlet on which you are listening. You should consider how the information applies to your situation prior to personally implementing it, and consult any financial professional you work with to make sure it's applicable to your financial plan.
Welcome back to Financial Issues. We're so glad that you're sticking around with us. I've got my friend and colleague, Jason MacDowell, back to join us for some conversation today. And I really just wanted to pick up on some conversation that we've been having around college planning. And I'll just say this, if you don't have any kids near college age, or maybe your kids are done, don't tune out just yet, because we're going to get to some outside of the box kind of thinking, some things that you may have never even heard about that you could do to turn some of your college planning into generational planning. So welcome back, Jason. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So you and I have had many conversations about college. You've got a 2-year-old. I've got a 13 and 11, and mine are closer to college age than you are. But, it's like if my kids, depending on the college that they picked, they might not get any of my money to go there. So I know you kind of feel the same way with yours. So the whole future of college or the liberal indoctrination camps, as I like to call them, is kind of up in the air for my family. What about you?
Oh, same thing. But we know we have not only clients, but there's partners that might have saved for it. So let's cover some strategies and maybe some options for them if plans change.
Well, we've discussed different kinds of savings vehicles. There's education savings accounts that are, just about anybody could have. There's a limit of $2,000 a year that you can put into those. And you can actually be biblically responsible with that strategy, since Timothy has the Timothy plan has those types of accounts. 529s, we've talked about those kind of at length. There's not really a way to be biblically responsible unless you go for the options that don't have any growth, like the money market or just the treasury fund, but that kind of defeats the whole purpose of having a tax advantaged account. So Jason, the solution that we fall back to most of the time is just to open a custodial account, within either the name of the parent or the grandparent with the child as the beneficiary. Can you kind of go back over those reasons why?
Yeah, it's more flexibility. Thanks to the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, it's really just an act that allows for a custodial account. It allows minors to receive gifts and avoid some tax consequences until they become of legal age. In that particular state, it's typically 18 or 20 years of age. It's very state specific that way. It can be controlled by the custodian, which is important. And it can have a little bit more flexible options as far as cash and securities, real estate, paintings, royalties, and patents is the list that I have. So it opens up a little bit more than just cash per se. Contributions are after tax dollars. They are subject to gift tax rules. So anytime there's tax consequences, we always want to recommend talking with your tax professional and how your particular situation and how it applies to you in your particular state as well. So that's very important. That's always good, wise counsel to check with.
Yep. Mm-hmm. So, in the financial planning community, I've heard people talk about using Roth vehicles for college savings. And that's a little bit out of the box kind of thinking, where either they want to use their own Roth to pay for college, or maybe they want to try to set up an account in their kid's name, fund that, and then use that for college. Can you talk about a little bit about how that strategy might work and what you think about it?
The way it might work in that case is, you always have the ability to take out your contribution. So probably wise to keep track of that with your broker dealer in some form, just for tax purposes, and keep that communication with your CPA of when you did that, what year, and that there are contributions. So that's one way and pay for it. And then there's another way where we know that some parents want to open a Roth for their kids, but then there's limitations to, it's going to be in that chain. They need to have earned income, and they follow the rules as everybody else with a Roth. So there's some limitations there that might become what I call like a jam point of being like, this doesn't really fulfill a long-term strategy properly. And personally, in my opinion, I don't necessarily like it. I think there's better options. I think the Roths can be better used for way down the line in the future where there's tax-free growth, and then once qualified, tax-free withdrawals, even to your inheritance from that way too. So that is better for generational planning for the very long term at that point. So
right. When the Roth first came out, I always thought, wow, this is kind of too good to be true. the government's going to let you have tax-free growth forever and then pass that along, to the next generation. They're going to get to have it, for a very long time. And then of course it'll have to, come out and you'll lose the tax-free status of it. And not a huge percentage of the population has really taken advantage of Roth, but a lot of people have been able to accumulate a lot of money in Roth accounts that the government never gets the benefit of using as long as the tax laws stay the same. But Roths, traditional IRAs, retirement plans, they're all what we call qualified accounts because they qualify for special tax treatment because the government said so. So there's the risk there is the government can unsay so, or they can change the law. They can limit how much you can put in. They could say you can't put any more in. They could say, well, there's going to be a special, we're not going to income tax your distributions, but we're going to put some kind of fee on it or something like that. The government can get really creative and do what they want. So I don't really like the idea of using a Roth for college because I'd rather save it for down the road when taxes are much higher and you may not have the opportunity to put money back in if you do take it out. So this brings up the kind of the outside of the box kind of thinking. I don't think a lot of people know about this, but speaking of government changing rules, there's a rule that changed back in 2019 that allows you to be able to use some of your if you have money in a 529, it enables you to convert some of that into a Roth. So rather than using a Roth account to fund college, I would rather use an old college account to maybe fund a Roth account. Can you speak to that, Jason, about what was it that changed that, and how can we use those changes?
Absolutely. So Shannon, the Secure Act opened up some options and in 2019, and then in 2022, the Secure Act 2.0 is the act that we're going to talk about here that allows for 529 plans that have been open for at least 15 years for that particular beneficiary. So look at a parent or a grandparent that opened up a 529 for a grandchild or child, and they've been open for 15 years, and they have the ability now to do what's called a rollover contribution to a Roth for the beneficiary. So you've got your kid and it's been open for 15 years and they're going to change plans about educational use. It's not going to be used for education. What is another option now? Well, they can roll over up to the contribution limits of that specific year into the Roth in the name of the beneficiary, so your child in this case. And there's a maximum amount of about $35,000 that you can roll over. So you can look at it as contribution limits for each year. That child does need to have earned income. So it needs to be matched either with the earned income of the child if it doesn't meet the maximum contribution limits there. So there's some specifics. So please talk to your tax professionals or your financial professionals just at making sure you fulfill those rules. But it gives an option, right? It's a good option. Yeah. It's a really good option.
Yeah. So if you find yourself with an old 529 plan and you're frustrated, like I am, I opened 529 plans for my kids when they were born before I knew about biblically responsible investing. And, I quit adding to them, but it's like I've got this money there. It's not really growing a whole lot because I'm more convicted to be biblically responsible than I am to grow that money. So that money's, just barely earning anything. So, but let's say that your kid gets through college or they decide not to go to college, or you decide that you don't want to pay for the college that they're going to, then, this is a way to maybe transition some of that money and be able to fund a Roth account. So that's a really good thing. There are still some gray areas because, the IRS, Congress, the IRS are not really great forward thinkers. They don't think of some of the unintended consequences. And, because you can change the beneficiary of 529 plans, there's some gray areas in and around that. What might they want to be wary of?
Right now, changing beneficiaries might, we don't know if it resets the clock yet. We're waiting for the IRS to clear that up Basically, our whole industry is waiting on some clarity on the Secure Act 2.0 about that. But the idea that it gives an option if maybe that beneficiary stayed the same, then that gives an option for that one. Generational planning, you do have the ability to change the beneficiary there too. So you can continue using that if maybe someone down the line would like to use it for education purposes specifically. So
if this has triggered some checks and boxes for you and you want to see if you qualify, it's best to talk to your tax professional about it, about the details surrounding your contributions. Well, thanks for being here, Jason. We appreciate you weighing in on these issues and, helping me to help our audience think outside the box. Well, folks, we hope that you're going to stick with us because we have more financial issues to come right after this break.
When it comes to money, I always have so many questions. I never know where to go to get answers to those questions. They never really teach you this stuff in school, like some of the best ways to handle it, how to save, when to invest, where to invest, even just what to do with the money. And if I put it in the stock market, what's the best way to protect from losing it all? That fear can be paralyzing. You don't really know what decisions to make. As a Christian, I don't want to give my money to people who are going to use it for things that God hates. When I discovered financial issues, it was like a burden was lifted off my shoulders. Not only did I gain access to a simple investment strategy that I can manage myself, I also have the peace of mind that my money will not be going to companies that actively promote things that God hates. Financial issues has allowed me to experience peace in my investments.
Invest your money in a God-honoring way. Go to financialissues.org.
There are moments in life that define us. Choices determine the courses we take. Choices that create life, or those that save a life. And some make life worthwhile. There are decisions to stay, or to go, to remain the same, or to grow. Sometimes we pray and make peace. Other times we take a stand for what we believe. In celebration, mourning, triumph, and defeat, we are invested in every decision we seek. Despite differences, we have one thing in common: the desire to do all for the glory of God. Keep your wallet aligned with your heart and your investments in harmony with your faith. Timothy Plan, biblically responsible mutual funds, ETFs, and retirement plans. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objective, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com. Read carefully before investing.
The opinions and recommendations expressed on this program do not necessarily represent the opinions of the station or any of the program sponsors. Additionally, all products or services offered by the program sponsors may not be known by the program.
Folks, hope you enjoyed that conversation with Shanna and Jason. It's always good to have Jason on the program. Lisa's saying I love this guy. I do too, Lisa. Jason's a great guy, and we're excited to have him join us on a weekly basis on the program. Richard, great comment here saying, or don't go to college, bypass the indoctrination. Richard, I think there's a lot of wisdom in that there, brother. Not saying that all college degrees are useless, of course. Also not saying that you can't do some really good things with a college degree, but you can also do some good things without going to college. Maybe learning a trade, not getting into debt is a good thing, and not running the risk of that indoctrination, I think, is a very good thing as well to consider, of course. So good stuff there. Great to be here with you all this morning, this Monday, together with you all. Hey, I wanted to share with you today our show brought to you in part by our friends at Samaritan Ministries. Great option for you if you're in my life stage, a young person who needs affordable health sharing, or if you're someone who is on Medicare right now and you need something supplemental, if you're a little bit older, great option for you either way. You got to check them out, SamaritanMinistries.org. Their phone number is 1-877-764-2426. You can get all the information at SamaritanMinistries.org. That's the best place to go right now. Megan and I are in the middle of, we just finished up a need and we're about to start another one, our pregnancy, of course. So we're very excited for that. And by the way, Samaritan does offer some great options. If you are a young person and you've got a little one on the way, to kind of prorate those bills and get that started before you have to start paying some of those bills is a really good option for you. So you're going to want to check that out, SamaritanMinistries.org. All right, we got the Ag Report, folks. Craig Halgard coming on with us, and then we'll spend a couple more minutes talking about what's going on in the economy and maybe get to some of your questions as well. Here is Craig Halgard with today's Ag Report.
This is Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Ag update for September 9th. Well, unexciting export sales, a falling soybean market, and good weather had the corn market on the defensive for most of Friday's session. Weekly export sales were actually a net negative as cancellations exceeded sales. At the closing bell, December corn was 4.5 cents lower at 4.06 1/4. Disappointing soybean export sales put pressure on the futures market there as well. Despite having a modest advantage over Brazil's offers, U.S. export sales continue to lag the USDA's forecast. As a result, November beans were 18.5 cents lower on Friday, closing at $10.05 per bushel. Wheat saw U.S. export sales volumes last week underperform expectations, which in turn put pressure on prices. Now, U.S. winter wheat plantings are plodding along, and at the same time, insurance price support levels are being established. And those levels are going to be far less this year than the prior year. So traders are debating if this is going to result in fewer planted winter wheat acres and perhaps less inputs applied to the acres that are planted. At the close, Minneapolis December wheat was 12 cents lower at $6.13 3/4. Kansas City dropped by 11 1/4 cents to close at $5.77 and Chicago was down 7 3/4 cents, ending the day at $5.67 per bushel. A stronger U.S. dollar weighed on cotton futures. When the closing bell rang, we had December futures 156 points lower at 67.88. Livestock futures also retreating. We had October live cattle $2.07 lower, $175.17 per hundredweight. October feeder cattle dropped by $3.62 as they settled out today at $230.95 per hundred. And October lean hog futures dropped by $1.20, closing at $79.50 per hundredweight. Class 3 milk futures closed lower for the third consecutive session. At the closing bell, October futures were down 2 points at $22.84. Well, this has been Craig Haugard with your Financial Issues Ag update. We'll be right back with more financial issues after this.
There's Craig Haugard with us, folks. Let's take a look now at the markets. So, tough week for the markets last week. We'll recap it in just a moment. But on Friday, that weaker than expected August jobs report kind of proved too much for the markets to handle. And sure enough, they slumped downward to close the week. And it really was a truly rocky week. By midday, the major indices were considerably down, and the markets were on pace to actually finish their worst week since 2023. And sure enough, that's where they finished. The Dow finished down a full percentage point. The S&P finished about 1.7% negative, and the NASDAQ finished 2.5% negative. Now, the S&P was down 4.3% for the week, and that was its worst finish since March of 2023, worst weekly finish. The NASDAQ was down about 5% for the week. That was its worst finish since December of 2022. So definitely not a great week for the markets last week for sure. But if you've been following our strategy, you should not be surprised for this. We've been preparing for this. And so if you've been following us, this should not take you by surprise at all. So just keep on doing that. You can expect Shanna's commentary to be out soon. I usually try to get that out on Mondays, so that'll be coming out soon, folks. Currently, and by the way, this morning the pre-markets seemed pretty confident that they could come back, and currently the markets are looking good to start the week. So the Dow is up 0.7%. The S&P is almost a full percent in positive. The NASDAQ is up 1 1/5 about, so 1.5, or maybe more like, not 1.5, 1.2, 1.1 percentage points in the positive. So looking good to start the week here for the markets. This week, folks, somewhat of a busy week, not as busy as what we'll see next week with the Federal Reserve's meeting to likely start cutting interest rates. But this week, so Monday today, right as the show ends, we'll get wholesale inventories and consumer credit. Tomorrow, we'll get the NFIB Optimism Index. Wednesday, we'll get CPI and core inflation. That's one of the bigger numbers. Thursday's PPI, so they're kind of really some of those bigger numbers there. Also, our weekly jobless claims. We'll also get the U.S. federal budget numbers on Thursday. And then Friday, we get the import price index, and we'll also get the Michigan consumer sentiment preliminary number on Friday. So that's what we're looking at this week, kind of out of earnings season. We are coming close to the end of the third quarter. So a couple weeks after that, then we'll start quarter 3 earnings. But right now, I think we have time, Grant, if you want to get to James's question there from Friday. Let's hear what James has to say.
Yeah, James asks, I'm a long-term partner and love you folks. You are a great blessing to my life and finances. During Friday's show, as Shanna covered the topic of gambling, I was surprised to hear no reference to the big biblical issue with gambling. The question must be asked, what is your hope when gambling? The answer is that others will lose their money so you can have it. This is not the case with long-term investing. To a degree, it is the case in short-term trading. Love you folks. I hope you can include this thought at some point.
Thank you for reading that, Grant. And James, thanks for that question there and that comment. It's a good one. I'll try to address it, but I appreciate what you said there. It's great thoughts. I'll say, first of all, I'm grateful that you brought this up. The reason that we didn't get to this particular issue on Friday's show, and to recap, folks, if you watched Friday's show, we talked about gambling. Start of the NFL season, you're seeing a lot of increase in sports betting. And of course, gambling is one of the things that we screen out against. We believe that it is sinful and that it's wrong. But part of the reasons that we didn't bring this up, James, was simply not because of a lack of care, but a lack of time. We had a packed show on Friday. We had some calls, limited time to get to everything. So I'm glad you asked it because we have time to get to it now, of course. Now, I'll say, I actually believe that there are several pretty big biblical issues when it comes to gambling. I agree with what you're saying. I don't think that's the only issue, though. I think there's a lot of big issues with it. Yours is very important. That issue that you brought up might not be the only one, though. Let me recap quickly what we touched on Friday, maybe add some thoughts also. All of these issues that I'm about to say really have to do with gambling being very, very dangerous. So first, gambling is unbiblical because it's unwise. I think that's one of the huge issues with it. Trusting your hard-earned money to the roll of a dice or to a get-rich-quick scheme or to a sports game is being a very poor steward with what God has given you. You have no control over that stuff. It's completely out of your hands. Imagine if I trusted, I don't know, my son's life or my daughter's life to something that was completely outside of my control and could go one way or the other. That'd be foolish, right? You don't want to do that with your money either. It's not as important as your children, but your money is important for sure. So first of all, I think gambling's unbiblical because it's unwise. Second, I think it's unbiblical because it's dangerous. It's dangerous. Most people lose money. I mean, that's just the reality of it. Most people, the majority of people who gamble lose money. That's how the gambling industry makes money, by the way, is they make money off of people spending their money and not winning. Winning is the exception to the rule. Most people spend and they don't win. They like the thrill of it. Maybe they like the camaraderie, all that stuff. But that's how they make money. And so it's very easy to become addicted to that, especially when you win. And that's almost equally as dangerous as losing. Losing is dangerous because you lose your money. Winning is dangerous because it gives you a false sense of security and it makes you want to come back. Makes you want to come back. You need the hit to keep being satisfied, not unlike heroin, not unlike pornography. And so your satisfaction becomes in something other than Christ. That's very dangerous. Very, very dangerous, not just in this life, but in the next. We believe the Bible has one approved way of building wealth. And it is not gambling. It's not hastily building wealth. It is long-term steady growth. The Bible has one way that it says you can build wealth this way, and it's long-term. Long-term. I believe the biggest issue with gambling is that I believe it is sinful, it is morally wrong, and the people of God should have no part of it. Now, you bring up a good point. Great point, James. The question the gambler must answer is, what is my hope in gambling? You know, for a lot of people, it's getting rich. Some people, it's the thrill. If you've studied the history of the greatest basketball player of all time, Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was a fantastic basketball player, made millions of dollars, also had a pretty big gambling problem. Part of the reason for that was because he was ultra competitive. He was addicted to winning. He was addicted to it. And I think that that's part of the reason why gambling is so dangerous is it is addictive. And with any addiction, the win becomes so important that the addict feels like, you know, if I win, it gives me this sense of control and power. They make winning their God. And so it's really dangerous. And James, I think you bring up a tremendous point. If your hope is in anything but Christ, that is so dangerous. And our prayer for you all here at the ministry is that we can always be pointing you to the only hope in life and death, which is Jesus Christ. The only person who can satisfy more than your money, even more than building wealth the right way, is finding true wealth in Jesus Christ. So I hope that would be your method that you find true hope and happiness and wealth in is Jesus Christ. Folks, it was a great show. James, I appreciate that comment. It was excellent. We'll do it again tomorrow. Remember, it's all His. Let's be found good and faithful stewards with the money that God has given us. And until then, we'll see you tomorrow. Have a great day.
we ever forget that we're one nation under God, then we will be a nation gone under.
Thank you for joining us. This has been an FISM production.